My name is Veronica, and I'm 31 years old now. 6 years ago, on my 25th birthday, my family told me I wasn't worth celebrating and kicked me out of their house. I spent years rebuilding my life from scratch, eventually buying my own home. Now, after years of silence, they've suddenly reappeared, claiming my house is a family asset they deserve a share of. The audacity of their betrayal still leaves me breathless. Where are you watching from today? If you've ever had to stand up to family who took advantage of you, hit that like and subscribe button before we dive into my story. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Seattle, where the rain seemed to match the constant dampness I felt in our family dynamic. From my earliest memories, our family of four had clearly defined roles that never changed. My mother, Margaret, was the controlling force. My father, Thomas, followed her lead without question. My older brother, Anthony, was the golden child. And I was, well, the afterthought. Our modest two-story house always seemed to have room for Anthony's trophies and achievements, while my report cards and art projects mysteriously disappeared from the refrigerator within days. This wasn't something I understood as a child, but looking back, the pattern was painfully obvious. Anthony needs new soccer cleats, my mother would announce at dinner. Veronica, you can wait until next semester for those art supplies your teacher recommended. This happened repeatedly throughout my childhood. When I needed a graphing calculator for advanced math, I was told to borrow one from the school. 2 weeks later, Anthony got a brand new gaming system because he worked so hard. By 14, I started babysitting in our neighborhood to earn my own money. By 16, I was working 20 hours a week at a local coffee shop while maintaining my grades. My parents never drove me to work, never asked about my schedule, and certainly never suggested I cut back on hours to focus on school. Meanwhile, Anthony was discouraged from getting a job because football is your job right now, son. When high school graduation came, Anthony received a brand new Jeep Cherokee. I received a card with $20 inside and a note that read, "Proud of you." The contrast couldn't have been clearer. College only widened the gap. My parents paid Anthony's full tuition at Washington State, covered his apartment, and gave him a monthly allowance. For me, there's just not enough left, Veronica. You're smart, you'll figure it out. And I did figure it out. I cobbled together scholarships, worked 30 hours a week across 2 jobs, took out modest loans, and somehow managed to graduate with a psychology degree in 4 years. My goal was to become a therapist, maybe help other people who felt unseen in their families. The day I graduated, my mother took credit while talking to her friends. "We always pushed Veronica to be independent. Look how well she turned out." My father nodded along as if the years of neglect were actually a carefully crafted parenting strategy. After graduation, I managed to rent a tiny one-bedroom apartment near the community mental health center, where I found entry-level work. It wasn't much, but it was mine. For the first time, I could come home to a space where no one made me feel less than, where my things weren't moved without permission, where I could exist without apology. I decorated with secondhand furniture and framed prints from thrift stores. I bought myself plants and watched them thrive under my care. Simple pleasures that represented freedom. Still, I maintained contact with my family. Sunday dinners once a month, holiday gatherings, occasional phone calls that left me emotionally drained. I always brought gifts or food contributions that stretched my budget, while Anthony showed up empty-handed to thunderous welcome. As my 25th birthday approached, tensions had been building. My mother had begun dropping hints about my selfish apartment. All that money on rent when you could be staying in our spare room and helping with family expenses. I had pushed back gently. "Mom, I need my own space. I'm an adult building my career." "Family helps family," she had replied sharply. "Anthony never forgets where he came from." What she didn't mention was that Anthony at 27 had bounced from job to job, racking up debt that my parents repeatedly paid off. His football dreams had faded after a mediocre college career, and he seemed unwilling to commit to any particular path. Yet somehow this was presented as admirable loyalty rather than failure to launch. The week before my birthday, I had begun to feel a familiar knot of dread. Experience had taught me not to expect much celebration, but this birthday felt significant. A quarter century. I had survived and achieved despite the odds. I wanted to acknowledge that even if no one else would. Little did I know that my birthday would become not a milestone to celebrate, but a day that would sever family ties completely and set me on an unexpected journey toward true independence. My 25th birthday fell on a Tuesday. I had planned a small celebration the following weekend with the few close friends I had made at work. Nothing elaborate, just dinner at my favorite Thai restaurant and maybe drinks afterward. I hadn't expected anything from my family given their track record with my birthdays, so I was genuinely surprised when my mother called the night before. "Veronica, we're having dinner tomorrow for your birthday. Be at the house by 7. Before I could respond, she had hung up. I sat staring at my phone, a mixture of hope and suspicion swirling in my chest. Could they finally be acknowledging my birthday in a meaningful way? The practical part of me knew better, but there's always that childlike part that wants to believe your parents might change. The next day at work, I found myself distracted, wondering what the evening might hold. My colleague Jasmine noticed my unusual mood. "Everything okay?" she asked during our lunch break. "My family invited me for a birthday dinner tonight," I explained. Jasmine knew some of my family history. "That's great," she said, though her tone held a note of caution. "Just keep your expectations reasonable. Okay?" I nodded, appreciating her understanding. "I'm trying. It's just, this would be the first real birthday celebration they've given me since I was 12. After work, I went home to change. I put on a new blue dress I had bought myself as a birthday gift, applied makeup with extra care, and even wore the silver earrings my grandmother had given me before she passed. I wanted to look nice for what I hoped would be a turning point in our family dynamic. I arrived at my parents' house at exactly 7, carrying a bottle of wine I couldn't really afford. The driveway was unusually full with cars I didn't recognize. My stomach tightened. This wasn't what I had expected. When I rang the doorbell, the sounds of laughter and conversation spilled out. My father opened the door, seeming surprised to see me. "Oh, Veronica, come in." No happy birthday, no hug. Just a distracted welcome as he immediately turned back to the living room full of people. As I stepped inside, I realized what was happening. My brother Anthony stood in the center of the room, his arm around a woman I had never met. People were raising glasses in their direction. "To the future, Mr. and Mrs. Anthony Wilson," someone called out. My mother spotted me and waved me over with the barest acknowledgement. "Veronica, look who got engaged last night. Isn't it wonderful?" In that moment, everything became clear. This wasn't a birthday dinner for me. This was an engagement party for Anthony. On my birthday. I stood frozen, the wine bottle growing heavy in my hand, as relatives and family friends I rarely saw congratulated my brother. No one said happy birthday to me. No one even seemed to remember what day it was. I placed the wine on a side table and made my way to the kitchen, needing a moment to collect myself. My mother followed. "Can you help serve the appetizers?" she asked, gesturing to several trays. "Since you're here," the words slipped out before I could stop them. "Mom, today is my birthday." She glanced at me with impatience. "I know what day it is, Veronica, but this is important. Your brother is getting married. We can do your birthday another time." "Another time," I echoed. "Like when you've never celebrated my birthday properly, and now you're using it for Anthony's engagement party without even telling me." My mother's expression hardened. "Lower your voice. This isn't about you." "It never is," I replied, feeling years of hurt bubbling to the surface. "Not once in my life has anything been about me in this family." "That's not true, and you know it," she hissed. "We've done everything for you." "Like what? Name one thing you've done for me that you didn't do twice over for Anthony." She couldn't answer, which only fueled her anger. "This family has real things to celebrate. Your birthday isn't important compared to your brother's engagement." Each word hit like a physical blow. Not important. I'd heard variations of this message my entire life, but never stated so baldly. My father and Anthony entered the kitchen, drawn by our raised voices. "What's going on?" my father asked, looking annoyed at the interruption to the festivities. "Veronica is upset that we're celebrating Anthony's engagement today," my mother explained, making me sound petty and childish. Anthony rolled his eyes. "Seriously, sis, it's just a birthday. You get one every year." "And you've gotten everything else every day," I responded, no longer able to contain years of resentment. The kitchen fell silent. Then Anthony laughed an ugly sound. "Oh, here we go with the victim routine again. Poor Veronica, always feeling sorry for herself." "That's enough," my father said, but he was looking at me, not Anthony. "No, it's not enough," I countered. I've never been enough for this family. Do any of you even care that I put myself through college? That I have a career I built from nothing? That I support myself completely while Anthony still gets his bills paid at 27? My mother's face flushed with anger. How dare you, after everything we've done? What have you done? Tell me, I challenged. We gave you a home and education opportunities. You gave me a place to sleep and food to eat, which is the legal minimum. I earned my education. I created my own opportunities. You gave Anthony everything and me nothing, and you know it. My father stepped forward. That's enough, Veronica. You need to apologize to your brother right now. I stared at him in disbelief. Apologize for what? For finally speaking the truth. My mother's next words changed everything. We need to discuss something else while you're here. Your father and I think it's time you gave up that ridiculous apartment. Anthony and Lisa will need help with their wedding and family needs to contribute. The audacity left me speechless for a moment. You want me to give up my home to pay for his wedding? I finally managed. Family sacrifices for family, my father said, as if this were a reasonable request. Anthony would do the same for you. No, he wouldn't, I replied, suddenly feeling calm in my clarity. He's never done anything for me, and neither have you. You need to grow up, my mother snapped. Stop being selfish. I am grown up. I've had to be because you never parented me. And keeping my home isn't selfish, it's sane. My mother's face contorted with rage. If you can't support this family in its time of joy, then you don't need to be part of it at all. Margaret, my father said, a rare note of hesitation in his voice. No, Thomas, she cut him off. I'm tired of her attitude. Either she helps with the wedding and stops this jealousy, or she can leave. I looked at each of their faces. My mother's self-righteous anger. My father's weak disapproval that would never translate to actual support. My brother's smug satisfaction. I'll leave, I said quietly. Not just tonight, but for good. Drama queen, Anthony muttered. My mother's voice turned cold. If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back. We're done with your ingratitude. I nodded slowly. I'm done too. Happy birthday to me. I walked out of the kitchen through the living room full of celebrating people who had never cared about my existence, and out the front door into the chilly October night. As I reached my car, I heard the door open behind me. For a brief, hopeful moment, I thought someone had come to apologize to ask me to return. Instead, my father stood on the porch holding my purse that I'd left in the confusion. He walked down and handed it to me without meeting my eyes. Your mother means what she said. He told me, his voice flat. Don't call. Don't come back. Then he turned and walked back into the house, closing the door firmly behind him. I sat in my car keys in hand, tears streaming down my face. I was 25 years old, and on my birthday, I had lost the only family I had ever known. Or perhaps I had finally accepted they had never really been mine to lose. I spent my 25th birthday night sleeping in my car in a Walmart parking lot. I had driven away from my parents' house in such emotional turmoil that I'd forgotten my apartment keys on my kitchen counter. The locksmith couldn't come until morning, and I couldn't afford an emergency call fee anyway. Curled up in the back seat under my thin jacket, I cycled through shock grief, anger, and a strange sense of liberation. By morning, exhaustion had replaced all other emotions. After getting into my apartment and showering, I faced a decision about whether to go to work. I needed the money desperately, especially now that I was truly on my own, but I looked like I'd been hit by an emotional truck. In the end, necessity won out. I applied extra concealer to my puffy eyes, put on my most professional outfit, and headed to the community mental health center. My supervisor, Linda, took one look at me and frowned. Veronica, are you okay? I'm fine, I lied automatically. Just didn't sleep well. I made it through 3 client sessions before breaking down in the staff bathroom during lunch. Jasmine found me there, sobbing over a sink. What happened? She asked immediately, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. Between hiccuping breaths, I told her everything about the previous night. You can stay with me, she offered without hesitation. I have a pull-out couch. Stay as long as you need to get back on your feet. Her kindness only made me cry harder. In one night, I'd lost my supposed family and discovered what real compassion looked like from someone who was practically a stranger. I accepted Jasmine's offer, but insisted on contributing to groceries and utilities. Even in my lowest moment, I couldn't bear the thought of being dependent on anyone's charity. My apartment lease ran through the end of the month, which gave me time to find something cheaper, even if it meant a longer commute or a less safe neighborhood. Over the next few weeks, I went through the motions of living: wake up, go to work, search for apartments during lunch, return to Jasmine's sleep, fitfully repeat. I lost weight. My hands developed a constant tremor. Clients asked if I was feeling well, and I reassured them with professional lies. One evening, staring at rental listings I couldn't afford, a wave of reality crashed over me. I might become genuinely homeless soon. My savings had always been minimal, and first and last month's rent plus security deposit would wipe me out completely. If any emergency arose, I would have nothing to fall back on. No family safety net, no parents' basement to retreat to. Nothing. In a moment of weakness, I tried calling my mother. The call went straight to voicemail. I left a brief message, not begging, but simply stating I wanted to talk. She never called back. I tried my father next with the same result. Finally, in desperation, I called my brother. He actually answered, but only to say, "They meant what they said, Veronica. You made your choice." Then he hung up. The finality of the rejection hit harder than the original expulsion. They weren't just angry. They were done with me. 6 days after my birthday, I had become a non-person to the people who had raised me. Jasmine found me that night, curled in a ball on her bathroom floor. "I think you need help," she said gently. "More than I can give you." The next day, she went with me to the community mental health clinic where I worked, but we went in as clients, not staff. The irony wasn't lost on me, a mental health worker having a breakdown. My colleagues were professionally kind, but I could see the pity in their eyes. I was assigned to Dr. Patel, a compassionate therapist who specialized in family trauma. "What you're experiencing is complicated grief," she explained in our first session. "You're mourning both the family you lost and the family you never had but deserved." Those words unlocked something in me. I had spent my life trying to earn love from people incapable of giving it. The realization was both devastating and freeing. Weeks turned into months. I found a tiny studio apartment in a questionable neighborhood, but it was mine. The kitchen was barely large enough to turn around, and the bathroom sink leaked constantly, and I could hear my neighbors arguing through the paper-thin walls. But no one could take it from me or tell me I didn't deserve it. At the clinic, I threw myself into work, taking extra shifts when possible. My supervisor noticed my dedication and connected me with Diane, a senior therapist who ran a specialized program for trauma survivors. She became more than a colleague, gradually evolving into a mentor. "You have something special," Diane told me after observing one of my group sessions. "Your clients trust you because they can sense you understand their pain authentically." I didn't tell her why that was true. Not yet. But her words gave me a fragile hope that my personal suffering might somehow make me better at my job, that the pain might eventually have purpose. 6 months after my family cut me off, I enrolled in additional certification courses in trauma-informed care. I couldn't afford them, not really, but I took out a small personal loan, reasoning that the investment in my career was necessary for long-term stability. By day, I counseled clients dealing with their own family traumas. By night, I worked at a 24-hour diner serving coffee to night shift workers and college students. Between jobs, I studied. Sleep became a luxury I could rarely afford. The toll was physical as well as emotional. I developed migraines. My hair started falling out in clumps. The dark circles under my eyes became a permanent feature. But slowly, incrementally, my bank account began to grow. $20 here, 50 there, small victories that kept me going. Diane noticed my exhaustion one day. "Veronica, you're burning out," she said bluntly. "I can see it happening." I started to deny it, but she raised a hand to stop me. "I know what it looks like because I've been there. After my divorce, I worked 3 jobs until I collapsed, literally collapsed in a grocery store. Don't follow my example." That conversation led to another, and another. Diane began inviting me for coffee after work, helping me develop a more sustainable plan. She reviewed my resume, suggested professional organizations to join, and introduced me to colleagues who might offer better opportunities. Through one of those connections, I found a weekend position conducting intake assessments at a private practice. It paid better than the diner and advanced my career simultaneously. I gave notice at the restaurant, feeling both pride and terror at the change. On my last night at the diner, my regular customers gave me a card with cash tucked inside. Not much, just small bills, but the gesture reduced me to tears. These people, some of whom I barely knew beyond their coffee orders, had shown me more genuine care than my own family. By the 1 year anniversary of my birthday exile, I had established new routines: work at the clinic weekend, work at the private practice therapy with Dr. Patel, occasional dinners with Jasmine or coffee with Diane. I had started a small emergency fund and was making timely payments on my student loans. I was surviving, but not yet thriving. The nightmares persisted: dreams where I was locked outside my childhood home, pounding on doors that never opened. I still flinched when I saw a Jeep Cherokee like my brother's. Certain family holidays sent me into emotional tailspins that took days to recover from. But I was standing on my own 2 feet. I had built boundaries to protect my fragile new life. And most importantly, I had learned who I could truly count on when everything fell apart. Not the people who shared my DNA, but the ones who shared their kindness without conditions. Rock bottom had taught me the difference between biological family and chosen family. And slowly, I was building the latter, one authentic connection at a time. 3 years after being disowned, my life had transformed in ways I never could have predicted. The community mental health center had promoted me twice, and I was now a senior counselor specializing in family trauma therapy. The irony wasn't lost on me that my own painful experiences had become a professional asset, allowing me to connect with clients in a uniquely empathetic way. My tiny studio had been replaced by a one-bedroom apartment in a safer neighborhood. The walls were still thin, but at least I no longer heard domestic disputes at 3 a.m. or worried about my car being broken into every night. More importantly, I had developed a support system that proved family isn't always about blood. Jasmine had remained a steadfast friend, bringing me soup when I was sick and dragging me out dancing when I became too isolated. Through her, I met Maria, a vivacious kindergarten teacher, whose optimism balanced my tendency toward caution. I had also formed an unexpected friendship with Daniel, a fellow therapist who specialized in addiction counseling. He had his own complicated family history and understood my boundaries around holidays and celebrations without taking it personally. Family is who shows up, Daniel often said, not who should show up. At work, my relationship with Diane had evolved from mentorship to genuine collegiality. When the clinic received grant funding for a specialized trauma program, she recommended me to co-facilitate. "You're ready for this," she insisted when I expressed doubts. "Your clients consistently report breakthrough insights after working with you." Taking on the new role meant a significant pay increase and professional recognition. For the first time, I began to see a career path rather than just a job that paid bills. I invested in additional training, networked at professional conferences, and started building a reputation in the local therapeutic community. The financial stability allowed me to begin side consultations at a reduced rate for clients who couldn't afford traditional therapy. This work was particularly meaningful as I remembered my own struggles all too well. As my income grew, so did my financial literacy. I still remembered the bone-deep fear of potential homelessness, and it made me determined to build security. I met with a financial advisor named Taylor, who helped me develop a long-term plan. "I want a home," I told her during our first meeting. "Not just an apartment, but something that's truly mine that no one can take away." Taylor didn't laugh at what seemed like an impossible goal given my income and savings. Instead, she created a step-by-step plan to make it happen. "It will take time," she warned, "and sacrifice. Are you ready for that?" I almost laughed, as if sacrifice was something new to me. For the next year, I lived on a strict budget. No vacations, no new clothes unless absolutely necessary. No takeout or restaurant meals except for rare celebrations. Every bonus and extra dollar went into my house fund. I picked up additional consultations whenever possible, sometimes working 12-hour days. By my 29th birthday, 4 years after being disowned, my house fund had grown to a respectable down payment. It wasn't enough for Seattle's inflated market, but Taylor had helped me research first-time homebuyer programs in neighborhoods within commuting distance, where prices were more reasonable. The house hunting process was both exhilarating and terrifying. Each property I visited represented a potential future, a place that could become a true home. Some were immediately eliminated due to major structural issues or locations that would make my commute unbearable. Others were snatched up by all-cash buyers before I could even submit an offer. After 3 months of searching and 2 failed offers, I found it. A modest 2-bedroom fixer-upper in a transitional neighborhood. The kitchen needed updating, the bathroom was straight out of 1975, and the backyard was more weeds than grass. But it had good bones, as the inspector confirmed, and more importantly, it was within my budget. My offer was accepted. The mortgage process was a nightmare of paperwork and verification, complicated by the fact that I had no family references and a credit history that reflected my earlier financial struggles. But Taylor had prepared me for this, and I had every document ready, every explanation for potential red flags drafted, and professional. When closing day finally arrived, I sat at a table signing document after document until my hand cramped, and then the final signature complete, the agent handed me the keys. "Congratulations, homeowner," she said with a smile. I drove to my new house alone, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. The rooms were empty, waiting to be filled. The walls needed paint, the floors needed refinishing, but it was mine, all mine. I sat on the floor of what would become my living room and wept, not from sadness, but from a complicated mixture of pride, relief, and vindication. I had done what my family said I could never do. I had built security for myself without their help or approval. That night, I slept on an air mattress in my empty bedroom, the echo of my movements bouncing off bare walls. It was the best sleep I'd had in years. Over the next few months, I slowly furnished the house, finding pieces at estate sales and thrift stores, refinishing them myself on weekends. I painted each room, taking my time to select colors that made me feel calm and grounded. The backyard became a project for spring, with ambitious plans for a vegetable garden and flowering perennials. Friends helped when they could. Daniel had unexpected skills with basic plumbing repairs. Maria's artistic eye helped me arrange furniture for optimal flow. Jasmine organized a housewarming party, where everyone brought practical gifts like tools and kitchenware. At the party, Diane raised a glass and toast to Veronica, who has built not just a house, but a home and a life to be proud of. As I looked around at the smiling faces of my chosen family, I felt a sense of peace I had never known in my biological family's house. Here I was valued. Here I belonged. For 2 years, I lived in that peaceful space, slowly making the house truly mine. I built garden beds in the backyard, installed new kitchen cabinets, learned how to repair drywall and replace light fixtures. Each improvement increased both the home's value and my sense of accomplishment. My career continued to advance as well. I was now supervising junior therapists and considering options for private practice. My client load was full with a waiting list. Professional colleagues sought my input on complex cases. I had become known for my work with family estrangement and abandonment issues, turning my personal wound into professional wisdom. Life wasn't perfect. I still had moments of unexpected grief, still dreamed of reconciliations that would never happen. But those moments grew less frequent and less overwhelming. I had built a life that was wholly mine, and it was enough. More than enough. Then on an ordinary Tuesday in spring, a notification appeared on my phone that would shatter my hard-won peace. A social media message from a name I had tried to forget, Anthony Wilson, my brother. "Hey sis," it read. "Been a long time. Mom and Dad talk about you sometimes. Thought you might want to know." And just like that, the family I had finally stopped waiting for decided it was time to return. The message from Anthony sat unanswered for 3 days while I processed the shock. 4 years of complete silence, and now this casual greeting as if we'd simply lost touch. No apology. No acknowledgement of what had happened. Just, "Hey sis," and the manipulative bait that our parents talked about me sometimes. I showed the message to Dr. Patel during our monthly check-in session. "What do you want to do about this?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Ignore it," I said immediately. But, I sighed, but I'm curious what they're saying about me and why they're reaching out now after all this time. That's natural, she assured me. Just remember that engaging doesn't obligate you to anything. You can set boundaries at any point. After careful consideration, I sent a brief non-committal reply. Hello, Anthony. I'm surprised to hear from you after so long. His response came quickly. Yeah, it's been a while. How are you doing these days? The casual tone was jarring, as if we were old classmates who had simply lost touch, not siblings, separated by a traumatic family rupture. I provided minimal information, mentioning only that I was still working in mental health and living in the area. His next message raised my internal alarms. That's great. Hey, Mom was asking for your number. Okay, if I give it to her. I didn't respond immediately. The idea of my mother having direct access to me again brought back a flood of anxiety. Why now? What did they want? Before I could decide, my phone rang with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Veronica. It's Mom. Her voice, so familiar, yet now strange, sent me back to that birthday night in an instant. My heart raced and I struggled to find words. I'm still here, I finally managed. It's been so long, she said, her tone holding an unfamiliar softness. We've been thinking about you. Have you? I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. Of course we have. You're our daughter. The words hit like a physical blow. 4 years ago, she had explicitly told me I wasn't their daughter anymore. Now she was claiming me again as if nothing had happened. What do you want, Mom? I asked directly. Just to reconnect. It's been too long. We miss you. The conversation continued in this vein, with her making vague overtures of reconciliation, without ever acknowledging what had led to our estrangement. No apology. No recognition of the pain they had caused. Just an apparent desire to pick up, as if there had been a minor disagreement, rather than a complete disowning. Before I realized what was happening, I had agreed to a brief visit from her and my father the following weekend. As soon as I hung up, regret and anxiety flooded me. I immediately called Daniel. I just made a huge mistake, I told him. He listened as I explained the situation, then offered practical advice. Meet them in a public place, not your home. Keep it time limited. Have an exit strategy. I took his advice about the public meeting place, but not about my home address. When my mother pressed for where I was living now, I gave her the information without thinking, an automatic response to her authoritative tone that bothered me for days afterward. When Saturday arrived, I waited at a coffee shop near my house, rehearsing boundaries and exit strategies in my mind. When my parents walked in, the sight of them was jarring. They looked older, of course. My father's hair had gone completely gray. My mother had gained weight and moved with less confidence than I remembered. Veronica, my mother said, stepping forward as if to hug me. I stepped back slightly, extending my hand instead. The message was clear: we weren't back to hugging terms. The conversation was strained and superficial. They asked about my job, but showed little interest in the details. I asked about their lives, learning that my father had retired early due to health issues, and my mother was still working part-time at the same insurance office. And how is Anthony? I asked, curious about my brother's current situation. An uncomfortable glance passed between my parents before my mother answered. He's going through a bit of a rough patch. His marriage to Lisa didn't work out. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, genuinely meaning it despite everything. Yes, well, family helps family through tough times, my mother said pointedly. There it was, the familiar guilt tactic wrapped in platitudes about family loyalty. When we exhausted the safe topics, my mother leaned forward. We'd love to see where you're living now. Just a quick visit. Against my better judgment, I agreed. They followed me to my house, and as I unlocked the door, I felt a strange vulnerability, as if I were exposing something precious to potential damage. Their reaction to my home was not what I expected. My mother walked through each room with assessing eyes, noting the renovations and improvements. My father spent an unusual amount of time examining the backyard and asking about the property lines. This neighborhood is really coming up, he commented. Property values increasing nicely. I got in at a good time, I acknowledged. Lucky break, my mother said in a tone that somehow diminished my achievement. As they prepared to leave, my mother suggested dinner the following weekend. Your father and I would love to have you over, like old times. Nothing about this felt like reconciliation. There was no acknowledgement of past wrongs, no apology, not even a recognition that we needed to rebuild trust. Just an expectation that I would slot back into their lives on their terms. Yet driven by some lingering hope for the family I had always wanted, I agreed to dinner. The next few weeks followed a pattern. My parents would invite me to their home. I would go interact awkwardly and leave feeling emotionally drained. Sometimes Anthony was there, sometimes not. When present, he treated me with surface politeness that never acknowledged our history. During these visits, I began noticing concerning patterns. My parents asked detailed questions about my finances, my house, my career trajectory. They made comments about my lucky break in buying property. They reminisced selectively about my childhood, constructing a fictional past where they had been supportive parents who always knew I would succeed. After one such dinner, I overheard my mother on the phone saying, "Yes, she's doing very well. The house is lovely in an up-and-coming area. We always supported her ambitions, of course." The revision of history was breathtaking in its audacity. More disturbing was learning through an old family friend that my parents were telling people they had helped me buy my house. "Your mother mentioned the significant contribution they made toward your down payment," the friend commented. "So generous of them." I was stunned. Not only had they contributed nothing, but they had actively tried to prevent my independence. 6 weeks into this strange superficial reconciliation, the true motive emerged. After Sunday dinner, my father asked to speak with me privately in his study. "Your brother is in a tough spot financially," he began without preamble. "The divorce hit him hard." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said cautiously. "Family should help family," he continued, using the phrase that had been weaponized against me for years. "What exactly are you suggesting, Dad?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Your mother and I have been thinking. Your house has appreciated nicely. If you sold it, there would be enough profit to help Anthony get back on his feet. We could all live here together again as a family." The audacity left me momentarily speechless. They wanted me to sell my home, the security I had built entirely on my own, to bail out my brother's financial mistakes. "That's not going to happen," I finally managed. "Now, Veronica," my mother said suddenly, appearing in the doorway, as if she'd been listening all along. "Family assets should benefit the whole family." "Family assets," I repeated, incredulous. "My house is not a family asset. I bought it myself without any help from any of you." "We're your parents," my father said, as if that established some claim. "What's yours is part of the family." The conversation deteriorated from there, with increasingly transparent attempts to claim some ownership of my financial success. When I stood firm, my mother's mask of reconciliation slipped. "After everything we've done for you," she said bitterly, "this is how you repay us." "What exactly have you done for me?" I asked, "especially in the last 4 years." The question hung in the air, unanswerable, because we all knew the truth. They had done nothing. They had abandoned me on my birthday, refused my calls when I was nearly homeless, and made no effort to contact me until they saw a potential benefit to themselves. I left that night with absolute clarity. This wasn't reconciliation. It was opportunism. The following week brought the most shocking development yet. A neighbor called while I was at work. "Veronica, there are people showing your house to strangers. Did you list it for sale?" I rushed home to find my mother and father leading a couple through my backyard. My mother was saying, "The garden is lovely, isn't it? My daughter has always had a green thumb. We taught her everything she knows." "What are you doing?" I demanded, walking across my lawn. The couple looked startled. My mother maintained her composure. "Veronica, this is the Garcias. They're looking for a home in this neighborhood." "My home is not for sale," I stated flatly. "Please leave, all of you." After the embarrassed couple departed, I confronted my parents. "You were trying to sell my house without my knowledge or consent." "We were just exploring options," my father said defensively. "As a family." "This stopped being about family the moment you kicked me out 4 years ago," I replied, my voice steady despite my rage. "I want you to leave now, and I don't want you to come back." As they reluctantly moved toward their car, my mother turned back. "This isn't over, Veronica. Family has rights." Those ominous words would prove prophetic in ways I couldn't yet imagine. A week after catching my parents showing my home to strangers, a certified letter arrived. The return address was from a law firm I didn't recognize. With trembling hands, I opened it to find a formal legal notice claiming my parents had significant financial interest in my property based on family investment and verbal agreements. The letter demanded I either sell the property and provide them with 50% of the proceeds or buy out their interest for a sum that was nearly the full value of the home. It threatened legal action if I failed to comply within 30 days. I read the letter 3 times, my disbelief turning to panic and then to rage. Not only were they attempting to steal my home, but they were doing it through legal intimidation based on complete fabrications. Unable to think clearly, I called the one person I knew would understand both the legal and emotional implications, Diane. "This is outrageous," she said after I read her the letter. "But don't panic. This kind of baseless claim happens more often than you'd think. I went through something similar with my ex-husband's family." She referred me to Sarah Martinez, an attorney who specialized in property disputes and family law. I called immediately and was relieved when Sarah offered to see me the next day. In the attorney's office, I laid out the entire history, my childhood, the birthday abandonment, the years of no contact, their sudden reappearance, and now this legal threat. Sarah reviewed the letter carefully. "This is mostly intimidation tactics," she explained. "They have no documented financial interest in your property. The mortgage is solely in your name, correct?" I nodded. "And you made the down payment entirely from your own funds." "Every penny," I confirmed. "Did you ever discuss them having any financial stake in your home? Even in casual conversation?" "Never. They didn't even know I was buying a house until after I had owned it for 2 years." Sarah made detailed notes asking for documentation of my mortgage bank statements, showing the down payment source and any communications with my parents since they had reestablished contact. "What about the broader family?" she asked. "Have they been telling relatives that they helped you buy the house?" I explained what I had learned from the family friend, and Sarah's expression grew serious. "That's defamation if they're making false claims that damage your reputation. We should address that as well." As we developed a strategy, I received a call from Maria. "Veronica, something weird is happening. Someone called the school asking questions about you, claiming to be doing a background check for a property dispute." Similar calls came from my workplace, and even from Daniel. My parents were apparently trying to build some case against me by contacting people in my life. More disturbingly, Sarah discovered they had been telling extended family and old family friends that I was experiencing mental health episodes that made me unfit to manage property. The cruel irony of using my profession in mental health against me wasn't lost on either of us. "This is a coordinated campaign," Sarah observed grimly. "They're trying to undermine your credibility while building a fictional narrative of financial contribution." We decided on a multi-pronged approach. First, Sarah would send a cease and desist letter regarding both the false property claims and the defamatory statements. Second, we would document every instance of harassment or misrepresentation. Third, we would prepare for the possibility of needing a restraining order if their behavior escalated. The cease and desist letter seemed to only inflame the situation. My mother began calling repeatedly, leaving voicemails that veered between tearful pleas about family obligations and veiled threats about what would happen if I forced them to take legal action. My father showed up at my workplace, causing a scene in the reception area that required security intervention. He was shouting about ungrateful children and family property as they escorted him out. The most painful development came when distant relatives and old family friends began reaching out, having heard only my parents' distorted version of events. I received messages accusing me of elder abuse, of stealing family money, of being heartless toward my brother in his time of need. "They're poisoning your reputation," Sarah acknowledged when I forwarded these messages to her. "But they're also creating excellent evidence for our case." The emotional toll was immense. I struggled to sleep, jumping at every noise outside my house. I installed security cameras and changed the locks, fearing my parents might still have the spare key I had foolishly given them during our brief reconciliation. Work became my sanctuary, the one place where my competence and character weren't being questioned. My clients, unaware of my personal turmoil, continued to trust me with their own family traumas. The irony was both painful and oddly grounding. My support system rallied around me. Daniel helped install the security system. Maria brought dinner on nights when I was too drained to cook. Jasmine stayed over several times when I felt too anxious to be alone. Diane provided professional cover at work, ensuring my increased absences for legal meetings didn't impact my standing. After 3 weeks of escalating harassment, Sarah suggested we request a formal meeting with my parents and their attorney. "Let's get everything on record," she advised. "Sometimes seeing the evidence laid out clearly is enough to make people back down." The meeting was scheduled for a Wednesday afternoon at Sarah's office. I spent the night before in a state of anxious preparation, rehearsing what I would say, how I would maintain my composure, when faced with the people who had first abandoned me and were now trying to take the security I had built for myself. When we arrived, my parents and Anthony were already seated in the conference room, along with an older man Sarah identified as Gerald Watson, a general practice attorney from our suburb, who likely had little experience with property law. My mother's eyes filled with tears when I entered a performance I had seen countless times in my childhood, whenever she felt challenged. My father sat stiffly, avoiding eye contact. Anthony looked sullen and entitled, scrolling through his phone until the meeting began. Sarah opened by clearly stating the purpose of the meeting to address the baseless claims against my property and to document the pattern of harassment. "My client has sole ownership of her home," she stated firmly. "She purchased it without any financial contribution from family members. All documentation confirms this fact." Gerald Watson cleared his throat. "My clients maintain they provided significant support throughout their daughter's life that enabled this purchase. There was an understanding that family properties would remain family resources." "What specific financial contributions are you claiming?" Sarah asked directly. My mother jumped in before her attorney could respond. "We raised her. We put a roof over her head for 18 years. We sacrificed for her education." "Mrs. Wilson," Sarah replied calmly, "parental obligation to provide basic necessities does not create future financial interest in an adult child's independently acquired assets." The meeting continued in this vein, with my parents making increasingly emotional claims about family obligation, while offering no concrete evidence of any financial contribution to my home purchase. When Sarah presented documentation of their harassment campaign, including statements from my colleagues and the incident report from security at my workplace, Gerald Watson looked increasingly uncomfortable. "Additionally," Sarah continued, "we have documented multiple instances of defamatory statements made to community members suggesting my client is mentally unstable and financially irresponsible. These statements are demonstrably false and appear designed to damage her professional reputation." My father shifted in his seat. Anthony stopped pretending to be absorbed in his phone. My mother's tears dried up remarkably quickly. "If these actions continue," Sarah concluded, "we will have no choice but to pursue restraining orders and possibly civil action for defamation." A heavy silence fell over the room. Then, unexpectedly, I asked to speak. "I want to address my family directly." I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Sarah nodded, and I turned to face the people who had once been my entire world. "For 25 years, I began. I tried to earn your love. I worked harder, asked for less, and accepted whatever scraps of attention you were willing to give me. When you kicked me out on my birthday, I was devastated. But eventually I realized it was the best thing that could have happened to me." My mother made a small sound of protest, but I continued. "Because of that night, I discovered what real family looks like. It looks like my friend Jasmine offering her couch when I had nowhere to go. It looks like my mentor Diane seeing my potential when you never did. It looks like colleagues and friends who value me for exactly who I am, not what I can give them." I looked directly at each of them in turn. "I built my life without you. I bought my home without you. I created success without you. And now you want to claim ownership of what I've achieved. That's not how family works. That's how parasites work." Anthony flushed with anger. "You always thought you were better than us." "No," I corrected him. "I always thought I was less than you. You taught me that from childhood. But I've learned differently now." I turned to my parents. "You threw me away once. You don't get to pick me back up when you think I might be useful. I'm not a resource. I'm a person who deserved better than what you gave me." The room fell silent again. Finally, Gerald Watson cleared his throat. Perhaps we should take some time to reassess this situation, he suggested, glancing at my parents with what looked like new understanding. Sarah seized the opening. I think that's wise. In the meantime, all communication with my client should come through me, and all visits to her home or workplace must cease immediately. As the meeting broke up, my mother made one last attempt, catching my arm as I moved toward the door. Veronica, please, she whispered. We're still your parents. We're still your family. I gently removed her hand. No, you're people I used to know. Family is something else entirely, something I found on my own. Walking out of that office, I felt a weight lift. Whether they pursued their ridiculous claims or not, I had said what needed saying. I had stood firm in my truth and my worth. Whatever came next, I would face it from a place of strength, not fear. A week later, Sarah called with news. Gerald Watson had contacted her to formally withdraw all claims against my property. Furthermore, my parents had agreed to cease contact and respect my boundaries, though they had refused to sign any formal acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Is it really over? I asked, hardly daring to believe it. The legal threat is over, Sarah confirmed. Whether they'll respect the no-contact agreement long-term remains to be seen, but if they don't, we're prepared. To be safe, Sarah helped me file a temporary restraining order based on the documented harassment. It was a difficult step to take, signing legal papers declaring my own parents a threat to my safety and peace, but it was also necessary a formal boundary to replace the emotional ones they had repeatedly violated. When I returned home that evening, I stood in my kitchen looking around at the space I had created, the life I had built. For the first time in months, I felt truly secure in it again. My house was mine. My life was mine. And the people who tried to take them from me had no power unless I gave it to them. The relief was so profound I sank to the floor, tears streaming down my face. Not tears of sadness, but of release. The final severing of ties that had bound me to people who had never truly seen or valued me. I was free. Truly free in a way I had never been before. In the year following the legal confrontation with my family, I embraced the profound freedom that comes with closing a door firmly and walking away without looking back. The restraining order expired after 6 months, but there was no need to renew it. My parents and Anthony had finally accepted that their manipulations had failed. The initial relief gradually gave way to a more complex emotional landscape. There were still moments of grief for the family I had never really had. Days when a child with her parents at the grocery store would trigger an unexpected wave of sadness. Holidays that echoed with absence despite being surrounded by friends. Dr. Patel helped me navigate these feelings, a journey she called grieving with eyes wide open. You're not grieving what you lost, she explained during one particularly difficult session. You're grieving what was missing all along. This framework helped me understand why certain triggers were so powerful. The little girl holding her father's hand wasn't reminding me of moments I'd had with my own father, but of all the moments that never existed. I continued my therapy sessions, now focusing less on crisis management and more on long-term healing. We worked on transforming the narrative from one of abandonment to one of liberation and self-creation. My home became a physical manifestation of this transformation. I completed the renovations I had started, choosing each detail with intention. The kitchen now featured open shelving displaying colorful dishes and cookware. The living room walls held framed photos of my chosen family and art that spoke to my journey. The spare bedroom became a combination home office and reading nook with built-in bookshelves and a comfortable chair by the window. The backyard garden flourished under my care, producing vegetables and flowers in abundance. I installed a small patio where I hosted dinner parties for friends, creating new traditions to replace the family gatherings I had always found so painful. Professionally, I continued to advance. The private practice where I had been doing weekend work offered me a full-time position with benefits that exceeded my community center salary. After careful consideration and discussion with Diane, I made the transition. "You've outgrown us," she said with genuine pride when I shared my decision. "But promise you'll still make time for coffee now and then." In my new role, I developed a specialization in helping clients navigate family estrangement and boundary setting. My personal experience, now processed and integrated, became a powerful tool for connection without overwhelming me with my own unresolved issues. I also started a monthly support group for people estranged from family members, creating a safe space for sharing experiences and strategies. What began as 6 people in a community center meeting room grew to over 20 regular attendees, with some traveling from neighboring counties to participate. Through the support group, I met Jordan, a graphic designer who had cut ties with an emotionally abusive father 5 years earlier. Our shared understanding of complex family dynamics created an immediate connection, though. We moved slowly from friendship to romance, both cautious about trust after our respective experiences. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," I confessed to Jordan after we had been dating for 6 months, "for you to suddenly change or make impossible demands." "I know exactly what you mean," Jordan replied. "But maybe there is no other shoe. Maybe we're just 2 people who learned the hard way what we won't accept, so we're better at recognizing what's good." This perspective shifted something fundamental for me. My family experiences hadn't just taught me about pain and betrayal, they had given me clarity about my boundaries and values. The very experiences that had hurt me had also equipped me to build healthier relationships. On my 31st birthday, 6 years after the disowning that had changed the course of my life, I hosted a gathering at my home. Jasmine and her new husband Maria and Daniel, colleagues from both the community center and private practice, Diane and her partner Jordan, and several members of my support group filled my home with laughter and genuine warmth. As we sat in the backyard enjoying the early autumn evening, Jasmine raised a glass. "To Veronica, who taught me what real strength looks like." Others added their own toasts. Daniel to my professional ethics, Maria to my gardening tips, Diane to my resilience. Jordan was the last to speak. "To Veronica, who showed me that family isn't about who shares your DNA. It's about who shares your values, respects your boundaries, and chooses to stay even when things get hard." Looking around at the circle of faces illuminated by string lights and candles, I felt a completeness I had never experienced in my biological family's home. These people saw me, valued me, and chosen me, just as I had chosen them. Later that night, after everyone had gone and Jordan had fallen asleep beside me, I stood at my bedroom window looking out at the neighborhood I had made my own. 6 years ago, I had slept in my car homeless and heartbroken on my birthday. Now I had a home, a career, a partner, and a community that felt more like family than my family ever had. The journey from that broken girl to the woman I had become hadn't been easy or straightforward. There had been setbacks, dark nights, and moments when giving up seemed the only option. But each step, each choice to keep moving forward despite the pain, had created something precious and entirely my own. My mother's voice still echoed sometimes her final plea in the attorney's office. "We're still your family." But I had learned the profound truth that family isn't an immutable fact of biology. Family is a relationship that must be earned and maintained through respect, love, and mutual support. The people who had given me life had failed at creating family, but their failure had ultimately freed me to discover what family truly means and to build it for myself brick by brick, choice by choice, love by love. True family, I had learned, isn't who you're born to. It's who sees your light when others only cast shadows. It's who stands with you when others walk away. It's who celebrates your joy without envy and holds your pain without judgment. And sometimes the greatest gift a toxic family can give you is the push that sends you out into the world to find your real one. Have you ever had to create boundaries with family members who tried to take advantage of you? How did you find the strength to stand up for yourself? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that family is about how people treat you, not just who you're related to. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the family you choose is more real than the family you're born into.